There we go.
Who feels like an autopsy? We're
I don't know.
I know.
What roadkill are we looking at tonight?
Oh boy.
Well, some Fury roadkill. No, I got a little cheeky with the thumbnail for this live stream. I crossed out roundtable review. I stamped autopsy in official looking military letters. I put little cross out X's over Anya Taylor-Joy's eyes. But I don't want anyone to think that I came into this live stream ready to hate on Furiosa, because when I made that thumbnail, I had not seen Furiosa. It was the attempt to, and that's what we're going to do tonight, an attempt to be clinical and fair and assess the movie and see, does it deserve to be this historically lowly attended over a Memorial Day weekend, or is there something else going on? Now, having just seen Furiosa in IMAX mere hours ago, right. I fully stand by my thumbnail. But anyway, tonight I am here with Earth's Mightiest Critics. And
I'd like to say I was surprised, but I'm not.
Yeah, I was like, that's too much of a wind-up.
This does not surprise me at all. His reaction doesn't. I fully expected this exact reaction.
Mark, I wanted to be surprised by anything I saw, and it just okay. Before we get into it, because we're going to talk spoilers and we're going to do the whole shebang. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive, Every Movie Has a Lesson, and the Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, and Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions. If anyone else drops in, we'll let them in. And if you out there are watching this now, please feel free to comment. Did you see Furiosa? What did you make of it? We'll talk about everything, including spoilers. And we're not going to mess around with what did we think without spoilers. We're just going to go ahead and put up this little banner here, because who knows what's going to come out of our mouths.
Okay.
This is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road from 2015, a film that in the popular imagination, or at least I think in geek circles, was much more popular than the box office at the time would have us believe. I mean, it did really well. It made $300 million at the box office, but I don't know that it warranted enough for a huge and much longer prequel 9 years later. And the opening weekend box office of Furiosa, I know these things aren't always important, but sometimes they are telling, was, last I saw it was $25.1 million for the 4-day weekend. Some people initially had said, it's going to be like 180, and then it got revised down to 100, and then maybe 40, and it got bested by the Garfield movie, which, yikes. It's an R-rated prequel. It does not have Charlize Theron. It does not. Okay, it technically has Mad Max in it, but I almost stood up and gave the screening a middle finger when I saw that cameo. But this is not a Mad Max movie, even though it is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Yeah. So, what's going on with this movie, guys? Let's get some high-level opinions. We've got the spoilers on, so feel free to talk about anything in the film. Folks watching, this is your fair warning. We're going to get into all of it tonight. Mark, I want to start with you, because you, I think, are, as we just established, shocked at my reaction of negativity. I take that you were higher on this film than I was.
Oh yeah, there was so much shock when you just said what your opinion was. Let me tell you, I just, in fact, while I was watching Furiosa, I'm looking at this going, I know exactly what Ian is probably going to say. Now, Ian, you do sometimes surprise me. Don't get me wrong, but you and I have we've done many a podcast together over the years, so I think we've got hundreds. And you and I have got a kind of a vibe for each other of how we're probably going to feel most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time about a film.
You guys are work wives is what I call it.
We are at this point.
I work with all lady school teachers, and it's just like, what's going on? You could tell what's going on in their life the second they walk in the door, how they have their coffee, how they have their hair. You two are work wives. That's what's happening.
Listen, hold on, Don. Wait, Mark, sorry to interrupt. I have to correct the record.
Yeah.
Mark may be my work wife, but I'm a Utah work wife guy. I have many. I have several work wives.
Mightiest Critics.
He's polycinematic. There you go.
There you go. I go always.
Polycritical. No.
Hey, Ian, is that more men than women?
Yeah.
What? No.
Is that more
a whole lot
Mormon
more of
than
us
men?
dudes here.
Anyway,
No, I said Mormon, trying to make a Mormon.
no,
point.
I get it.
I joke.
When you have to explain the joke, doesn't work.
No,
You Leno'd it. You Leno'd it. That's good.
I joke.
If you don't understand it, that's your problem.
Yeah.
Keep
You know,
crunching,
I
they'll
never,
make
I
more.
never fully assume, but I just will say I'm not surprised. But for me, I loved this film. I love this film quite a bit. I enjoy this world that they've built, this world building that they do in this film quite a bit. I like the expansion of the apocalyptic world that we've only really seen. And I think this is one of the things that is probably jarring for people, is that this is the first film that we get that is not being told from the perspective of Max. So from the perspective of Max is screwed in the head far more than Furiosa. Max sees things wildly. So while this is a wild world he lives in, with the eye popping and some of the, you know, even across all 4 films that where Max has been in the title, basically, we're seeing the world through him and what he's experienced and everything. Furiosa is a different experience, and I can see where that's going to turn some people off if they're expecting another Mad Max film. This isn't a Mad Max film. It's not being told from Mad Max story. While it's set in the same world, doesn't mean it's going to be done in the same style that the other 4 Mad Max films were. Whether you like that or not, I'm just saying, I think that's one of the things about it. I loved it quite a bit. My oldest son, who's 24, honorable son number 1, well, he's 23. He'll be 24 in a month. He loved this film. He there's some flaws, there's some weaknesses, but overall, he dug this film quite a bit, as did I. I get the criticism, and I'm sure we'll get into it tonight, and I get but for me personally, I was not disappointed. There were only 2 moments in this entire film that I wish would have been removed for it to really dig. But outside of that, huh?
Yeah,
let's
pull over. Let's pull it over
Okay.
and tell us what those are.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's the Mad Max cameo, which my son and I had a discussion about on the way home, and I have a bit of a theory, but it is wafer thin. It is very wafer thin.
How long of a ride home we talking about? Is this another Wausau ride, or
this is another Wausau ride? No, this
those are the good rides you two have. Okay, here we go.
It was a new Wausau ride.
We need to have like Wisconsin geography, Raiders of the Lost Ark map with Mark, and where he goes to the movies, like
There goes the plane.
all over to Wausau.
You know, there's that scene, and then I didn't need the final scene of seeing her actually load the people into the truck and then I didn't need that. We knew that happened. We didn't need to see that actually unfold at the very end of the film. Had they ended it with just spoilers are out, with just the tree to the credits, I would have been, you know, maybe her picking the fruit, and you don't even see her picking the fruit. You just see the hand come up and pick the fruit. And then we had our first beat, and then it goes black to credits. That, I think I would have enjoyed it, you know, the ending even more. It didn't bother me, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, it wasn't needed. You could have trimmed that. And the Mad Max cameo, I have a theory about that, but again, wafer thin, because it could have played out a number of other ways. But I'll get into the Mad Max theory later. But you can get other people's opinions. But that's me. I dug it quite a bit. So,
well, I'll just say, Mark, I'm glad about the whole bit of her loading up the wives into the truck, because that led to the montage through the credits of scenes from Fury Road. And because I've not watched Fury Road in, I think, 8 years. I think the last time I watched it was the black and chrome version that came out, where it was in black and white, and it was horrible, because you realize how important color is to that movie.
You need that movie.
I saw it in the music box, nice big screen. It was great. I saw Fury Road, I think 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4 in the theater. I loved it. It was one of my favorite films of 2015.
Okay.
So that's where I'm coming from. But they show lots of scenes from Fury Road over the end credits of Furiosa, and it helps cement in my mind. I'm like, I'm not crazy. This is not a good movie. I'm watching scenes from a great movie, and this is a cartoonishly colored and performed facsimile of the Mad Max saga. These movies are getting longer, they're getting dumber, and they're getting way more unnecessary. And I hope, much like with James Cameron, George Miller's up there. I hope this is kind of his last film, because if he says, "Oh, I've got another Mad Max in me," if anyone ponies up the cash, I don't want to be be there for it.
Ooh, calling for the retirement. Oh man,
He is
He's
79.
like 80, right?
79. You said, Jeff?
79. Okay.
He's got one more script supposedly for the end of the trilogy after this prequel, but the likelihood of it it would be Furiosa, Mad Max Fury Road, and then Wasteland or Wastelanders, or
Wasteland,
I think it was is the last one, which is supposed to kind of put a bookend to the entire thing.
They find the rainforest at the end of Fern Gully. It's beautiful.
Tim Curry does the voice for a villain. As
Let
me just ask,
spreading oil across the sand.
Bow after bow of tied beautiful loose ends. It's gonna be great.
Is there a what's this last movie supposed to be? I know it's supposed to end the trilogy and all that stuff, but
no one really knows.
Supposed to be back. There's not like a synopsis or
there's not really a synopsis. There's
that would require plot, which
there is no there's no plot revealed. He probably just has some storyboards, knowing George Miller, but I believe it's supposed to involve Max one final time with it. But what everybody seems to miss is that, and everybody's talking about, well, the Mad Max and Fury Road is actually the feral kid, and they missed the point when Miller said, well, no, Fury Road takes place between Mad Max and Thunderdome. Thunderdome is actually supposed to be old Mad Max, and that's supposed to be he goes off into the sunset. That's actually the final
sunset, and then Sydney with the society, right?
And then we've got the society at the end telling the legend of Mad Max.
So another foregone conclusion coming. Great.
I did not know like where. I don't think I've seen all of Thunderdome.
Okay.
I've probably seen it in bits and pieces, but I've never sat down to watch it like all the way through. At least I don't think. I've seen Road Warrior and Mad Max, and I've seen all of them in some fashion, but it never occurred to me that Fury Road really took place at any point. It was sort of a soft. I knew it took place after the first two because they had the references, like with the bulging eyes and all this other stuff. But I don't know. I just kind of considered it its own thing, even possibly post Thunderdome, even though that doesn't make any sense. But this whole universe doesn't quite fit together.
I had this discussion on another podcast I was invited on to talk about Thunderdome, actually. Back to the frame rate, we discussed it. And I'm like, in all honesty, if you look at the way each Mad Max film is, this is more like a pulp novel, a post-apocalyptic pulp novel involving the same character, your PI or whatever, Mad Max. But each story, while it does hint back occasionally to previous, are their own self-contained stories just involving this character named Max, who shows up at various points. You could take any one of these films and you don't necessarily need to see the other films. Like my oldest, we rewatched Fury Road before we went to see Furiosa because he'd never seen Fury Road. He'd never seen any Mad Max film, and he loved Fury Road just fine. He didn't need to see the others. And watching Fury Road again, and then thinking of Thunderdome, and even thinking of Road Warrior, I'm like, you look at these stories, they're stories taking place in the apocalypse with this legend of this guy named Max who ends up getting caught up in whatever when he's just trying to make it across the wasteland.
Well, I know the movies are very different. I mean, even it's because when we talk about the original film, there is still some semblance of society. I mean, Max is a cop. And then in the second movie, it's a little bit further along. And then by the third one, it's like pretty much the end of the road. No pun intended. So they are the same in that it's about a man fighting against mutants in some form or another at the end of the world. But to say that they are, kind of self-contained stories, there is a line through them. And I think Fury Road is sort of a soft reboot, but also a spiritual continuation, at least. And there's a lot of new stuff going on. And then Furiosa is a prequel, which we'll talk about all that. But we're still in high-level opinions here, and we're 15 minutes in. No, it's not you, Mark. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping things under control and getting everyone's opinions. Jeff. You're on
Well,
the side of the angels here with Mark. So talk to us.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more in the middle in some respects, but I liked it. I think it was good in many ways, but not great. And I think Fury Road was great. I think Road Warrior was great in some respects. I think Road Warrior is still the best. Maybe not technically, but I think just as what it did as a film, it was very self-contained, very singular. It seemed like its own animal entirely. My biggest problem with Fury Road was, why is it Max? Because I don't know where he's fitting in this. He's not even the main character. He, in some respects, it's almost reminded me a little bit of what David Lynch did with Twin Peaks, where it's like, are you laughing at us? Because I don't think this is what anybody thinks is the way they wanted Dale Cooper to be brought back. And that's like, oh, he finally talks in the last hour. And here, in Fury Road, he doesn't talk for the first hour and 15 minutes, basically. And then sort of similar with Furiosa here. So there's a little bit of weirdness going on. I tell you what, I liked it, but I figured out very early, and I'm not saying this is the way to enjoy it, because maybe you don't if you don't care, but or see it. But I realized early on, this is not a movie like Mad Max, the Fury Road, or to some degree even the Road Warrior. It's really more close to the first one, and that is, it's a straight up revenge tale. It's a singular story. It's an ugly story. It's a mean as hell story. There's no laughs, and the laughs that are in there are not funny. Chris Hemsworth is hamming it up, trying to be funny as Dementus, and they don't give him very good lines. I mean, he's not as funny as whatever the character was that went on to become the foil in Commando. I forget the name of that character in Road Warrior, but he's not a great villain. He should have been a great villain, and I don't necessarily blame Hemsworth for it, but they kind of write him all over the map. He's trying to be a messiah, then he's trying to be a father figure, then he's actually this just awful, vengeful sadist, and then maybe he's, I don't know, a political animal or some sort, but then pulling the rug out from the enemies. But what I think is the problem with this movie is, and you're all going to say it, so I may be beating you to it, and I don't mean to steal your thunder, but I think two things. One is, because it is that movie, it is not fun. It is not a fun sit. It is a hard sit. I mean, we're talking child abduction here, and in this day and age, that doesn't play. It just doesn't. It's very hard and mean. And I kept thinking, are we going to see her being raped? That was my fear watching this.
Yeah.
Because there's very little humor in it, and it's getting really, really dark as it goes on. However, having said all that, I think they do some pretty amazing sequences with the stunts and the driving and fun stuff there. I love the little girl, Leela playing the young Furiosa, who dominates the first half of the movie. It's if I was Anya Taylor-Joy, I might be talking to my agent, because she doesn't come into the movie until an hour and 15 in as well. And that little girl makes a very, very strong impression. She's like the feral kid, kicking and screaming. And Anya Joy is kind of that way in the one scene where she's trying to hijack the tanker and she's crawling all under the underworks, and you get a little bit of that. But I also think a lot of that was a stunt person, because she's wearing a big wig and there's sometimes a hood on her and stuff like that. So you're kept a little bit at a distance from this full Furiosa character, because she's played by different actresses, and you don't get the full sense of the fun that you had with her in the first one, where she was kind of, flipping her metal finger to the establishment and stealing these women and taking them to a better place. This one also has, the mother is killed, but before she's killed, she's tortured and she's almost crucified. It's really dark. Now, I'll give Miller credit. He wanted to do something different here, and he did. He went back to if you ever seen the original Mad Max, it's a hard sit. It's a very hard sit to watch.
Yeah, you're killing women and children in that one too.
Yeah, and and I mean, I think this one has some of these, sort of spectacular set pieces with a lot of this other sort of brooding, mean material. At the same time, to Mark's point, I think it is interesting, the world that he's created, and these dynamics and how they work with each other. And, there's this kind of gonzo weirdness about it. I'm going to say one thing, though, that is also a criticism of it. And I said this in my review, while still being generally positive, but I agree, and I'm not going to probably disagree with most of what is said, is I think George Miller makes his own mistakes and he gets in the way of his own film. I mean, you're expecting this to be sort of fun, and it's not. There's no reason to do a prequel to the story of Furiosa. If anything, I want to know what happened to her after Max left. She seems to be in charge of this world now. What kind of ruler is she, or what is she like? Plus, as you said, it's a decade later. What's that like now? Charlize Theron is a decade later too. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to seen where she ended up. Does she have a better arm now because they've got better prosthetics in the future? Who knows? But I think you always are really being dumb, I dare say dumb, when you go the prequel route, because I didn't give a shit about Anakin Skywalker. Oh, the poor little boy, he started out so good, and we're going to waste a decade and 3 films to get him to be the bad guy. I want to see what happened to the Empire after they lost. You know, do the Jedi learn how to govern? Were they shitty as much as everybody else? And 20 years later, they're the enemy? I mean, that would have been far more interesting than let's go over this old material again. But we already know the ending to, and that's your original point. The last thing I'll say, and this is where I wag my finger a little bit at George Miller, and that is for a man who has done state-of-the-art stuff. I mean, other than Bullet and the French Connection, I don't think there's a better chase scene captured on camera in real time like it was in The Road Warrior. That was done with all real vehicles. They didn't have any CGI, and it is amazing. And that is the feral kid and the extras we've come to know, the support player, and Mel Gibson crawling around and all that shit. And I don't care if they're going 30 miles an hour and it's double the film speed to make it look like they're going 65. 30 miles is pretty fast down a track when you're crawling under a big tanker. So it's incredible. But George Miller gets in his own way here. I don't know how many times I counted green screen. I don't know how many times I could tell it was a stunt person. I don't know how many times I could tell that the cuts didn't match. And even, see, she gets her arm smashed. I know I'm jumping around here. She gets her arm smashed. It's like, oh, that's how she loses her arm. And then she sort of ballsy steals herself away from it and gets away with all those people rolling around and rolling. It's like, I mean, I'm not asking for logic per se, but show me a more clever way that she gets away. I mean, first of all, the blood loss from pulling your arm off like that would have made her, in any world, I don't care if it's post-apocalyptic Australia, probably faint, but show me a way that somebody else helped her or something. So I think George Miller gets in his way a little bit. And I don't necessarily say it's because he's older or he's done this too much. Maybe he should have done some other things and stopped with Well Enough Alone, 6 Oscars, and this kind of reputation as one of the greatest action films of this century. But this is interesting. I think it's fun to watch in many respects, just because of some of the world building that he does, but it is a very flawed film, and you can't deny, I think, even if people really like that. And Mark, I'll put it to you maybe later to say the green screen was shocking to me for a man who did state-of-the-art special effects in all those years, and to have that much green screen and stuff that's clearly not being shot out in the desert. I was flabbergasted. Yeah. And I think in this day and age, you can't do that. That's the thing, is if you're going to do special effects, you better spend the money, because when they didn't give Sam Raimi enough money in that first Spider-Man, and everybody went like, God damn it, why didn't they give him enough money? They gave him the money for the second one, and everything looked incredible in that, including every last shot of Doc Ock's incredibly detailed arms. And in this day and age, you cannot do green screen like that, where it's like, are they, I mean, you might as well be in the car with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn and Adam's Rib with, a film of the New York Manhattan skyline behind him as they're driving down the road. You can't do that in this day and age.
Okay, Jeff, I got to stand up. Oh, Mark, come back. No.
Pee break.
I got to stand up. I got to stand up for my boy George, not for boy George, but for my boy George Miller.
Okay. He fit right in this movie, though, by the way. Yeah.
Well, let's just be charitable and say he's working on this trilogy. Furiosa is the prequel to Fury Road. So maybe he's thinking, I'm going to make this prequel look as terrible as possible, so that by the time you get to Fury Road, it's going to look like we made all these leaps and bounds and it became an awesome film.
He knows people are going to watch it in order.
Trilogy. Exactly. He's thinking, he's like,
the last one will all be animated
about
CGI.
Future.
The last one will all be CGI.
Yeah. But for this one, it cost more. I mean, I know why, because they blew out on the green screen, but this one costs more than Fury Road, and it looks awful. So I'm following that too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of it looks great, but a lot of it doesn't look great. And I think that's the shocker. I mean, you look at Road Warrior. I watched that like 4 months ago. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite as glossy, but it was rougher. Sure. It was had a rough hewness to it.
That's what you
feel. I believe every second of that. Every second of that. And that little kid running around with that boomerang. Where'd they get that kid from?
Yeah.
All right, Don. So jump in. Tell us what you think of.
I admit, I'm not. You know me. I try to avoid the big E word of expectations. Fury Road. I was more mild on Fury Road. I needed a little bit more plot than just thumbs up from Tom's and little things like that. So obviously gobsmacking level action if you're right, and I'll tip my hat to that. But in terms of like the lore and explain, you don't have to, Basil exposition, but like I need a little bit more plot and description of that world back 9 years ago. For me to so kind of prefacing that to get to here, to me this is just curse of the prequel. You have a foregone conclusion character who's going a foregone conclusion direction, who we know is going to lose an arm. We know no new character is going to make it beyond the other spot, beyond this movie. We know all the characters that aren't killed that are going to be killed in the next one, like all of Morton Joe's little lieutenants and stuff like that. Like, all right, we're not going to see any comeuppance of anybody here for another movie until Nicholas Hoult crashes them against a bridge and stuff like that. So it's now this story. If this was not a prequel, this is a very compelling. This can be a compelling story, I should say. If George had the balls to put this movie first, knowing he's got a heck of a character in Furiosa, because it is. If some way somehow this movie was first, where you have this rich character, and all of a sudden at the end of the movie, wow, Mad Max is in this world and maybe can come into play in the second one, like in order, made in order instead of prequel order. This could work. Because again, we're into this world. We get the dynamics of the three different strongholds and towns between what a Morton Joe has and Bullet Farm and then Gasville or whatever the hell it's called, Gas Town or something like that. And obviously the brutality of the world is reintroduced thanks to Chris Hemsworth's character, and like you said, the mean things we're doing to women and children that are possible in this wasteland world. So I was on paper, I get it, but you immediately devalue all that when you place it in the prequel slot, where I feel bad for it. I really do feel bad for this movie, because Anya Taylor-Joy does deserve chances to kind of step out of just being the preening shell. Now again, she doesn't get a lot to do. In fact, I looked it up because we were talking about pre-show. She has 30 lines of dialogue in this movie. Tom Hardy had 63, and I thought Tom Hardy was already underbaked as it was, and here comes Anya Taylor-Joy with 30 lines. Jeff, you're right, call the agent. We know she can do better. So I wish this could have gave her better. I had hope for Praetorian Jack. I thought I believe his name is.
You mean Stacy Keach?
Yeah, he also looked a touch like Elvis, didn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Like with that 1970s comeback with the leather outfit.
Yeah, and that was a strength of Fury Road.
All I thought was, as Mark is fond of saying, dollar value Mad Max. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
it's Mad Max without being
he
Mad
was
Max.
Clearly trying to even look like him,
and that's
like he did in the first one. The same kind of hair.
And that would have been nice, because sometimes these big gaudy movies need kind of that I don't want to say Robin and Batman, but you need that number two hero a little bit. We talked about how I'm trying to remember what movie we talked about recently where a number two hero would have done a lot of good, rather than just a solo active just trying to wheel this movie into place. Where Praetorian Jack would have been pretty nice to kind of carry along. We know he's not going to make it, and guess what? He doesn't make it. But something would have been nice. Now, so for me, it's just the curse of the prequel. The Mad Max cameo, I'll segue back to that. The Mad Max cameo is really silly, because I feel like, so he's going to stand on that cliff for like 15 years and just eat lizards and watch everything happen, because that's exactly how we meet him in the last movie, where that just seems silly and redundant. Put him in a different place. Put him in a police car. Put him really show some scope of time there. But again, now that we're juggling with where this thing fits in the, again, foregone conclusion universe of the Wasteland, like if this truly is before Mad Max Thunderdome, where we're going to get to Grey Temple Mad Max in the Sydney ending, well then now I feel like I'm wasting even more time in this Wasteland universe, and I feel bad because I feel bad because there's talent here. There's George Miller getting a great paycheck to be able to make these things through. Like, how many times do we say, hey, give a filmmaker a chance to really bring their baby out in the theater? And George got that. George got 2 bags to make this movie in the last one. 9 years is too long to tell this without going forward instead of backwards. I would agree with you there. And that's a tough spot to be, because I'm with Jeff, especially with how good Charlize Theron is just aging into a fine wine as an actress, where 50, whatever she is, 51-year-old Charlize Theron would be an ass kicker in a new movie, rather than just, no offense to Anya Taylor-Joy, 30 lines of the pretty girl with nice lips. So Yeah, I don't know.
Can I interrupt for
Yeah,
just 1 second,
What?
Ian, just to say one thing to build
Yeah.
on something Don said?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one of the things I think now when I come on out of the showing is like, what brilliant screenwriting are you going to be doing, or maybe all of us get inspired to do, of how we would write this better? But Don
Yeah.
just inspired me in something, and that is one of the few prequels that I think really worked well
Okay.
was, of course, The Godfather Part 2. But you're not only telling
Mhm.
the story about Michael's future, which is really his ultimate decline, even though he's
Yeah.
risen to power where nobody can touch him, but you're seeing why Vito became who Vito was, and why Vito said, "This drugs, it's bad business. It's messy." And you saw that because he was doing stuff that was good for the neighborhood, good for his family, getting rid of the tyrant. And I'm not saying he was justified in becoming a killer, but he
Right.
did it for good reasons. And arguably, he kind of was sort of continuing that way, even though he killed the horse and some of those other terrible things that he did and stuff in his domain or reign or whatever you want to call it. But I kept thinking, if you're going to do something that sets up that, like The Godfather 2 did, what you could have done in this film is have her sidekick be a young girl, and she now becomes the mother trying to save this girl, and the girl gets killed.
Oh,
she lets her get killed.
Ripley thing, yeah.
Yeah, she gets her.
Yeah.
Because it's almost but she doesn't succeed, and it's
Right.
like Chinatown. You
Yeah.
know,
And we already know
the-
she lost the green place. Like,
and then
'cause
that
that's-
makes you realize that's why she wanted to save those young women.
yeah.
And that's
Or-
why she's sort of on this thing in Fury Road. She didn't succeed here. And I thought for the dark as this material was, that would have made a little more sense. And then you might have said, well, it may not make the box office. Maybe word of mouth is killing it. Maybe people don't give a shit about prequels. But that would have been, I think, the darkness that Miller started here. But by the time he's got Chris Hemsworth, kind of chewing the scenery and hamming it up badly, or just being silly, he kind of lost that opportunity. But that would have been something, because as soon as the guy starts driving, he's gone. And because to Don's point, you have to end up with her not having any allies, and the bad people who should get in this one don't. But that would have been something if she forged a relationship where she saw herself in, and it was a young person, like a feral girl almost. Sure. And that kid died she did. That would have been at least fitting with where they started this.
I'll pile on one way. If the opening kidnapping and mother chase sequence of this movie is fantastic, where if that's your 15 to 20 minute opening prologue of Fury Road 2, and then the little snippets of things that happen, and you don't even need Hemsworth at that point. If the little snippets of her rise to power and rise to prominence within a Morton Joe stuff is Anya Taylor-Joy in a great flashback role, while Theron is telling a story that goes forward, I bet you can still make that movie in 2.5 hours, where you have this big prologue sequence, which is, to me, the best action
Godfather
scene
2 in a way, Don.
Right. And you have something going forward while still, if you need to, and you feel like you need to, and it's nice because it's a character that earned it, while telling a backstory, but you're still moving forward. Like this, I'm with Jeff. A Godfather 2 treatment of this does worlds of difference.
Well, no, I like that parallel track is an interesting one. But Jeff, I'm really keying into something you're saying, because in the beginning we see young Furiosa and another little girl who we might assume is a sister or just a playmate. If they had both been kidnapped, and been brought to a Morton Joe and been brought up, leave Chris Hemsworth out of this movie.
Agreed.
But have both of them come up in this bizarre system of a Morton Joe. So Charlie Furiosa, because she's more combative, she gets relegated to enforcement or construction or something, like being head of the war boys. But the little sister ends up becoming almost groomed to become one of the brides. And then there's like this struggle between the two of them, these two worlds within this crazy world of the wasteland. And then at the end, Morton Joe kills the little girl, or they're young women at this point. Get another,
and she decides to save the others.
Younger. Right. That's her motivation.
Great idea too.
Surprise to us because she never mentioned her, and that's part of her mystery that carries over to Fury Road. I mean, I'm getting angry just thinking about these possibilities, because look, and here's the thing. Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and to your point too, it's funny because the whole real sort of last big surprise, other than the good guys winning in Fury Road, is that the land that she's telling them is the land of milk and honey no longer exists.
Right.
So even if Furiosa, she has to go back because that's all there's left. But can she turn that into it? They have trees in where the brides were, and she's growing something here. Does she do that and make it? I mean, you had the opportunity to a really good question about like what is her future? What is she going to do? I would have loved to have seen that, and maybe it's not as easy, or maybe she becomes a little bit power crazy, or maybe there's somebody else who has what she wants and they decide they want to get in, so she's now becoming kind of the bad guy too. I don't know, there's so many different ways they could have gone with it, but just creating Skywalker all over again is a waste. And I would think that George Miller, with all of his acumen, he's a doctor, he's had many successes, he did everything from Happy Feet to Lorenzo's Oil, and he's a smart as whip guy. And the previous movie won 6 Oscars and made a worldwide phenomenon. Don't do it again. Do something different. You've got it in you.
Well,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big kind of sticking points to me that stuck out is, again, going back to the prequel route. When you look at Fury Road and Charlize Theron's character's name is Furiosa, it sounds like a legendary name. Like she's a badass. She's full of anger and fury and gusto and revenge. But then you find out in this prequel movie, that's just her name as like a little kid. No. Oh, like, oh, look, little Furiosa. No, that should be bestowed upon her by Immortan Joe after she kills like a whole bunch of war boys or something.
Well, it's like the villain's named Dementus.
On the nose,
He's not, so he's named Dementus. I mean,
he got good grades in spelling in school. Easy.
According to IMDb, he's Dr. Dementus.
Of course.
He's got a top 10 crazy songs of the week.
Yeah.
The other thing, with the part of the flash forward of this is Furiosa, as a young girl, makes her escape, and she ends up hanging upside down underneath this bridge thing, and then it cuts to the wig that she'd fashioned for herself falls and lands on a branch, and we see this kind of cool animation of a branch growing as the wig is sort of part of it, and that's the passage of time.
Yeah.
And then we see her as, she's just working on, as part of the sort of the rig workers for Immortan Joe. And I'm wondering, okay, so we've jumped forward probably 10 years. Did no one notice that the 12-year-old bride, the most unique bride out of all of Immortan Joe's brides, is just, she's not there in the bride room anymore? None of the brides have said, where'd she go? Immortan Joe said, hey, where's the kid? Nothing.
Loose. Yeah. I mean, classic Ian pick there.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna put these,
you iron out in the third, fourth draft, like somebody reads and goes, hey, I like it. You got a little plot hole here, fix this. You got a little plot hole here, fix that.
And I think that's part of the reason I think Fury Road works so well is it is kind of light on plot and it's light on exposition. To your point, how do we get this world done? I don't think it necessarily, everyone needs something else about, out of movies, but I kind of get it because we've seen enough post-apocalyptic fare. We can see the details in the film that's like, okay, maybe this happened, happened, but it doesn't matter because we are these characters. We are in this situation. We've got to get home. That's what the movie's about.
That
when
can
you
work.
Start going into to Patton Oswalt's comedy bit about the Star Wars prequels, he's like, but in this movie we get to see him as a little kid. Like, no, none of that matters, unless it does matter, like we say with the personal stakes of having a sister or someone else like to set things in motion. But as far as we've talked about how this movie expands upon the world of Mad Max. I don't think it does. All it does is goes back and revisits it, and Star Wars prequels it. We see these bizarre characters in Immortan Joe's court. The weird Wall Street guy without a nose, who I don't remember if he was fondling his nipple in this.
He was in the Fury. He was in Fury Road.
He
I know.
played with his nipple all the time in that movie too, Mark.
Yeah. He was.
Oh,
okay. I didn't remember the nipple.
Yeah, he played with his nipples when he took out one of the
writing down
last of the many mothers.
Is nipple expert.
Hey,
Mark is the new Mr. Skin over there. Yep.
Yeah, no, he did that. He did that when they ran over the one of the many mothers that were left.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, but here's the thing. I know he was in Fury Road along with the other people in Immortan Joe's court, and they had respectively very little screen time other than the action that they were called upon to do. I don't need to know about them as characters or have extended extended scenes where they're talking to each other and saying inconsequential things that don't move the plot along or even
Office
witty
water
or
cooler stuff.
scary.
You know,
Right.
lives, you know? Yeah, it's terrible.
Honestly, guys, I was considering, I saw this movie at 12:30 p.m. this afternoon in IMAX. Huge booming sound, perfect conditions to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And I had trouble staying awake. And I also was fighting the impulse. I kept thinking numerous times, I'm like, could I just come on to the show, my own live stream with my panel and say, guys, I left halfway through. What does that mean? Fill me in. But I couldn't. I stayed. But it was honestly a struggle. Yeah. It was bad times.
There's that one good central it's again covered with green screen. Tom Burke's the name of the Praetorian Jack. There's that one good driving sequence where Anya Taylor-Joy's reveal this, trying to stow away and escape, and then becomes kind of
that's the best scene in the movie.
Best scene in the movie. Oh, I like that opening. I did say I like that opening chase scene through the desert with the mother and the daughter. Like that's really good. But like in terms of like the Mad Max level of things, that whole war rig introduction run is pretty good. But to Jeff's point a little bit, like we've seen that before now, and like we've seen the bendy post that guys, we've seen the different moves that they're going to do in terms of like how to stop another rig, even if it's their own, and like so, and then to green screen it and scale back what made that first movie so strong of the practical effects. You can feel the sand hitting you in the face. We see dudes falling down, and we have no clue how some people lived. Like that, it didn't have that quite edge to it. It's a fine scene, well shot by today's standards, but just not enough, you know.
And he knows how to shoot action. I mean, the camera play, the cutting, the build, close-ups. I mean, even his kind of gonzo camera, like right into the face, and then swing, swish pans and all that kind of stuff. Those are hilarious. Very few people use them anymore, and they now become almost a trope of Mad Max films. But
look,
was this trip really necessary?
It's not. Here's what happened. Okay, Fury Road was Heath Ledger as the Joker. They announced, hey, we're going to have this big budget. It's a Warner Brothers movie. It's coming out. And no one asked for Fury Road. Tom Hardy as Mad Max. What? I mean, Mel Gibson had his issues and everything. Although, considering the current state of politics, I don't know how many people, it'd be surprising how many people are actually offended by the remarks that got him into trouble in the first place.
Good point.
I think that maybe it was later in the timeline, he could have been in it at that age, at his real age. Why not?
There you go. So yes, I'm calling on people to uncancel Mel Gibson in light of recent events. No, that's not me taking a stand. I'm just being cheeky. But the thing is, with Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, they're like, wait, you're casting 10 Things I Hate About You, a Knight's Tale guy to be the Joker, to follow up Jack Nicholson. What are you talking about? But people went into both movies and they were like, wow, this completely works on every level. I mean, to different degrees, Don, but you said that you appreciated Fury Road. A lot of people were blown away by it, including myself, because you watch Heath Ledger's performance, like, wow, I never saw that angle with this character. Part of it's down to screenplay. Some of it's down to just the pure method that ultimately killed the actor who was doing it. Right. And then with Fury Road, you see someone taking a franchise that they had birthed and seen through 3 movies, waited 30 years and said, okay, I still have some gas in the tank. Not only that, but it's full of nitro, and you're not going to believe what I can do as a 70-year-old man. It's relentless. It's funny. We mentioned the humor. It's not just the screenplay, it's the filmmaking sensibilities. And I was reminded watching the end credits of this movie, where we flash forward to Fury Road, that wonderful moment where you've got Max on the swinging arm and he comes up and down almost like a windshield wiper, and it's like, what the hell is going on back there? There's so many moments in Fury Road that are just fun surprises to see, including most of Immortan Joe's flunkies, like that weird guy with the nose thing, and you've got like Rictus and Anus, or whatever the hell their names are.
Pretty close.
You get that, and it's surprising. Furiosa has no surprises in it. I mean, aside from Chris Hemsworth, but even as we've talked about, he's given nothing to do. He's not really menacing.
I wasn't scared by it. I know he crucified, tried to burn mom, and rips a dude apart with some motorcycles, but
But they also cut away from that to soften it, because I think they want him to still be kind of a lovable scamp when he shows up.
And Praetorian
like,
Jack
really?
is, of course, dragged to his death and also pulled away on that. Like when you watch Mad Max and the Road Warrior, they're not pulling punches with makeup and the brutality of George's original stuff. Like they're showing some violent shit. So
look, I had heard that Furiosa's mom was crucified. Like that's one of the few things I'd heard before going to the movie. And so when the moment happens, she gets taken by Dementus's men. And then we see Furiosa like kind of seeing her mother. We kind of see the reaction shot, and then we see mom like, "Oh my god, here we go!" And I'm like, "Oh wait, she's just kind of her hands are tied up. She's like tied to a tree. That's not a crucifixion. That's not hardcore. That's not. I mean, it's shocking for you to see your parents strung up like that. But as an audience member, I have an expectation. I'm like, well, what are they? I don't even know. I don't really understand how she died. There's a scene later on in the hey, what are the many cool ways we could have killed Dementus, where we see Hemsworth kind of strung up and there's like a fire that's slowly burning his balls. That was kind of fun.
I mean,
but
Last of the Mohicans, like you can go to scenes like that are fucking brutal. You're killing people in a church in The Patriot with Jason Isaacs. Like, if you want to do some villainy, it's been done better than Hammy Hemsworth. So
I also think that you've just launched a new reality show, Don, Killing People in Church with Jason Isaacs.
Good point. Yeah,
not recommending it again.
No, I understand.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like,
but of all the places to pull punches here in the movie that never pulled punches ever. So I was surprised by the softening of things. Like all of a sudden, George Miller became Eastwood or something. Like, let's put a soft piano in the background here. Hey, Lenny Niehaus, can you make me a score? Sorry, Tom Hulkenberg, put your Jungie XL drums away. I got just the thing.
Let me sing the song at the
Claudia's theme. Here we go.
Oh, super garage charger.
I just need
souped up to go through the desert. A gas tanker that holds balls.
You sound like Reagan doing Road Warrior haiku.
But do you remember Clint Eastwood talk singing Gran Torino during the end credits?
Oh God!
That's what I'm vamping.
I blocked that movie out of my memory.
He does. He goes, "Oh my Gran Torino," and he does sound a little bit like Reagan when he sings.
He does. Yeah.
There you go again, Ian.
No,
don't worry. Dennis Quaid will take care of that for us this summer, right?
I don't know about that so.
Horn to that one, huh?
Dude, I saw the poster for that movie. It looks like someone punched a Reagan impersonator repeatedly about the face and neck.
And you know who he's doing? You know who he's doing imitating? His voice sounds exactly like Phil Hartman's Ronald Reagan. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It's like that's his voice for Reagan. He's like, well, little girl, you sure are going to make a lot of people happy with all those Girl Scout cookies you bought and sold.
Oh my gosh. And we know Dennis Quaid is like down here, like he's got a low timber. So, yeah.
Well, we shall see, or maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, that's the thing. Is like I was really
come on now.
I was skeptical about this movie. Mark, you're absolutely right, and you're right to not be surprised at my reaction. But I go see these films because I don't want to go hate on them, because as I mentioned, I considered seriously getting up and walking out multiple times during this movie because I was so bored. I'm like, there's nothing coming. There's nothing happening. I can see where all of this is going because all roads lead to Fury Road. But I stuck with it because, maybe I'll be surprised. And it just, I don't like to hate on these things, especially when it's 2.5 hours. Dude, 12:30 screening. The movie started because the person in front of me was scrolling on their phone during the previews. The movie started at 12:58 p.m. So that's almost a half hour of trailers. And then I'm watching the movie. Yeah, I didn't realize that they were a half hour, like 20 minutes, 25, but this is getting ridiculous. So by the time it starts, I'm already, annoyed. I think, the whole thing with Furiosa really is this idea of going back, not thinking ahead. I was really excited after Fury Road came out when there were rumors of, there's going to be a Furiosa movie. I'm like, awesome. Charlize Theron in the wasteland.
Saved the movie for me last time, for sure.
Right. And that was the sort of the, in retrospect, is almost a bait and switch kind of thing because Mad Max gets hijacked in his own film. But I think it does work because of that perspective doesn't, especially as gonzo as Miller went with Fury Road. I think you need that balance of Charlize Theron to help carry that thing across
It's
the
what I'm
finish
talking
line.
about. It's that number 2 hero. Some of these movies that are that big, you need that. You can't have this Superman who does everything. She's that number 2 you needed that so many other movies need. So, yeah,
I think though too, if I can interject, and Mark, I don't want to step on because I feel like I've taken up too much of your time. But the one thing I read online was that apparently after the success of Fury Road, there was talk of doing this as sort of a 3-part entertainment kind of thing. There was going to be a second movie, there was going to be a video game, and I guess there was going to be some sort of comic miniseries about it.
okay.
And Warner Brothers said, "Oh, you mean like that Matrix thing that we were told to do a few years earlier? Screw that!"
Yeah.
So they quickly
that's
abandoned that. But I think, to your point, that might have at the time striking while the iron is hot, even if it was just a movie, not those other parts to it as well, would have been more timely. And I think, seemingly capitalizing that almost a decade since and some of those kind of things, it just takes the air out of the balloon to why you're, it's still well done. A lot of it's still fun to watch and it's still interesting. The stunts are amazing. Even some of them that shouldn't have been shot in front of green screen, but it beats The Fall Guy by a country mile or an Australian mile. Yeah. But it's just too long, and you think about The Godfather, the sequel to that, 1974, The Godfather, 1972. Mm-hmm. I mean, they made that one super fast to capitalize on it. Yeah. Coppola didn't want to do it, but Puzo said, let's do these parallel stories and show the ascent and the descent and the parallels. Oh, okay, that's a good angle. Let's do it. But, time kills these things a lot of times.
Yes. Well, Godfather 3,
Well, George Miller wanted to shoot back to back. If you guys haven't read, he wanted to shoot Furiosa and Fury Road back to back, and Warner Brothers didn't let him do it. And it's unfortunate because I think Furiosa at least hits a little bit better if you shoot them back to back.
Definitely.
Regardless of how you release them. And yes, I know how everybody on the panel feels about Furiosa. I disagree with a lot of stuff you guys have said, but that's okay.
Well, then jump in, Mark. I mean,
tell us where you disagree.
You gotta tell us.
You guys,
because I liked it, but I didn't love it. And the more I think about it,
I like criticisms. I like Chris Hemsworth's villain in here because it is a different villain. Whether or not you like how he was written, it's a different villain than what we've gotten previously. He is not completely gonzo overboard as the other two. Yes, he does have a performance. He has a few more layers to him than your other one-note villains that you get. Oh, this guy is the Mohawk guy who wants the gas. Oh, this guy is the guy wearing the hockey mask. Oh, Immortan Joe is the guy controlling all the water. Mm-hmm. Hemsworth, they were trying to give you a guy who was a little bit layered in explaining why he didn't just sell off Furiosa and why he kept her. That's why they gave him a little bit of layer. Whether you agree with how he performed or how he was written, that's what they were going for with that.
And that comes
I agree, Mark, but that's in the first 40 minutes. And that is interesting. When they first when that meeting with Immortan Joe and that kind of negotiation, and you see where he's claiming that Furiosa is the daughter, and then she says no, and he almost seems a little bit hurt, like, oh, I don't really want to let her go, but I also want this power. That's interesting. Yeah. The problem is his character development screeches to a halt for the rest of the 2 hours of this movie. We haven't seen a character like this in Mad Max, but we've seen this character tons of times in pop culture. I kept flashing back to The Walking Dead, to the villain of the season, to the governor, to Negan, to whoever, and they were much more charismatically played by, like, Jeffrey Dean Morgan with that damn barbed wire baseball bat. You get that guy is the head of the guy of the team that's going after Immortan Joe, and you've got an A+ movie. Chris Hemsworth, I like him as an actor. I think I love that he's getting a chance to go beyond Thor. I thought he was one of the highlights of Ghostbusters 2016, playing Kevin, the weird secretary guy. I like seeing him go over the top. It's just he deserves better material. Like, if Heath Ledger's Joker had been written by George Miller and the co-writer of this movie, no one would have talked about it. It would have been a great performance hamstrung by crap dialogue and no point.
Yeah, at some point, like when he hangs up her arm, you have to realize how terrible he is. And you don't see it in his face. You don't hear it in his words. You don't really get it in if anything, he's kind of on the decline almost then a little bit. But I mean, you need to have that moment where you see it in his eyes and he's like, he is Manson. There is this Kern
in
from
the
the
movie
charming
where we've in a series
because
where
I
we go there.
still a pregnant woman. Go
disagree. I
ahead.
disagree.
And
I think
he's
the
never
horror
frightening in this. I don't.
I think the horror comes from characters, and maybe it's just because I watch a lot of indie horror and stuff. And in fact, I just ran across a film that I just finished watching called The Girl in the Trunk, which had a character that was similar to where he never, the way he talked, sure, but he never actually looked on his face until like the very, very end, like he was mad, like he had a dark side to him. I think what made Chris Hemsworth's character work for me is that he seemed like just your average little wacko guy, yet he was doing these brutal things. I don't need to see him have that glint in his eye while he's pulling someone off. In fact, I think the fact of him acting indifferent to what he is doing actually had more impact to me than him sitting there and monologuing or being an Immortan Joe and going mediocre, and don't get me wrong, I love those elements as
but
well.
he needs,
but
could it about him doing like Terry O'Quinn in The Stepfather, where outside of the moments where he's in the garage or the basement raging and stuff like that, but there's just those little shifts in his eyes that show that he's not buying it.
I've got Jason Isaacs in The Patriot. I need
part of the thing is he's got a nose on, and he also has contacts in, so they're kind of robbing him of even his actor's utensil.
Charisma.
But for me, I didn't have a problem with the fact that you might not see the dark villainous in his eyes at all. For me, I kind of liked that because of his indifference to what he was doing to these people, or his just very matter-of-factly like, yeah, we're just going to do this now. But I get what you guys are saying. But for me, that's why I liked Chris Hemsworth, and I like seeing actors, whether it's written good or bad. I'm not saying he was written bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Furiosa was a perfect film by any means. I'm just saying I rated it high because I was highly entertained throughout, and I found a lot of fascinating things of George Miller trying to do something different than what we had seen in the Mad Max Roads. Whether or not it works for a lot of fans or not, we see tonight, it doesn't always work, and that's fine, and I get that. But for me, I like seeing Chris Hemsworth in a different role than what we're used to seeing him in doing something like this. It's the same reason why I enjoy, yes, my guilty pleasure of Fast and Furious, why and a lot of people hated it, but I liked Jason Momoa in the last Fast and Furious film. I liked him because I'm like, holy crap, this is a role we haven't seen him play before, and he's having fun, and I'm having fun watching him having fun. Whether or not the character is great, I have fun because it's someone seeing him do something different, and it almost opens up to hopefully maybe seeing him do other roles like that, But for me, I didn't mind Chris Hemsworth's character. I thought they had to do that because they had to have someone different than Immortan Joe. You couldn't quite have the same
two madmen,
two exact cold madmen killers, even though he is, but the personalities had to be different in somewhat. Now, maybe he did go a bit extreme with Hemsworth and a little too subtle. I get that as well. But I think you needed that separation. I personally love that meeting between Immortan Joe and Dementis, where he thinks he's got the numbers. He's like, hey, I got this huge bike rider group, and then Immortan Joe goes, he looks to his war boy, he goes, oh, pick a war boy. The guy picks a war boy, and he goes, witness me, spray, boom, blows up, and Dementis is just like, wait, what the hell?
Bit off more acting too.
Because
that
and have decadence be his flaw, and do it in a stronger way.
His hubris is his fault because he has given people a choice to join his gang. He is guy like, hey, be with us, we're gonna be successful because we grow in numbers, and he's not used to too many people actually like seriously standing up to him because in the wasteland where he has been, it's given the impression like he's been out in the middle of nowhere gathering all these nomads, and that's who he's gathered. He comes across a Morton who has an established society with Gasoline Town and Bullet Town, which a Dementis didn't even seem to really know about. So you got that isolation as well with that, and he's like, oh, hey, I found some opportunity here, and he's so used to winning that he's not used to resistance. And I like that angle. Now, yes, I will say that his development or arc or whatever you want to talk about with him, it gets slowed down after that conflict with, you know, Immortan Joe, but then it becomes more about Furiosa than it's about Dementis and the little, you know, the girl. So, I mean, I guess for me, I get what everybody's saying and what you're looking for. I guess for me, when I watched it, I knew it was going to be a prequel. So I hedged my kind of how things were going to play. And I had a lot of fun with a lot of the action sequences, like the Bullet Town, the whole Bullet Town action sequence. I actually thoroughly enjoyed, mainly because you know, Furiosa has the sniper rifle and everything, and using the strategy that she did and saving, you know, helping Praetorian Jack in that. I liked her in that. There were a lot of segments and such that I really liked and entertained, and I liked this exploration. And again, maybe it's the fact that with my excessively overactive imagination and probably ADHD at some point, that's not been diagnosed, I expand what's given to me in my head. I may have expanded more than what's presented on screen. I either fill in the blanks myself or whatnot, and don't just take always what, because I find this world that they're playing in fascinating. It was fun to see them play. It was fun to see more of Bullet Town, more of, you know, Guzzling Town. It was fun to see those intricacies and seeing other people not care for it. And then as far as the Mad Max cameo, my theory with that, which was wafer thin, but he gets immediately chased in the beginning at Fury Road. Right. It was almost like at first, you know, I thought maybe it was hinted at that he had dragged the young Furiosa to the hole, you know, near the Immortan Joe civilization, because he knew that's where the closest group was.
Okay.
And, you know, then the cannibal people pulled her into the cannibal kitchen, you know, and maybe Immortan Joe's people caught wind that somebody had done that with Furiosa, you know, brought him back there, seen him and looked for him. And when we pick up at Fury Road, they found him. Yes, it's wafer thin. I was just saying that's maybe maybe why they threw that cameo in, only to explain why they were after him later. But I think you could cut that out. There was no need for that shot. That was the one moment, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that I didn't care for, because I'm like, I don't want to be remembered of Mad Max at all. I don't need that memory. This is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I don't need the blip cameo of him standing there, which, again, like all you said, wow, how long was he sitting on that fucking ridge bed?
I know.
You know?
Have him do something else. You know,
it opens up so many other questions by throwing that in there. And
I like what you're thinking, because like if he's immediately chased, like because you're right, at the beginning of Fury Road, he's doing his thing in the cliff, and immediately Immortan Joe's guys are on him. So he's obviously in the middle of either a crossover intersection or a history with that, knowing that crew, or being stuck in that, orbiting that area. If you can stock that pond a little differently, like you're saying, other than standing on the same cliff, that could have worked. I just don't know what that look is, and how much passage of time we need to get from Anya Taylor-Joy to Charlize Theron, which to me is another decade. So like, that's a long match.
I would have liked to see these films back to back. I think I think it might have hit just a little differently, because you're still in that world, you're still in that zone with Fury Road, so maybe a little more things might have been a little bit more forgiving, because you have it so back to back. The fact that it is a prequel does hurt it for many people, and I totally get that, because prequels are tough for anyone. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I got soured on prequels because of the prequel trilogy, you know, because your stakes are limited, because you're like, well, I know she's going to survive all this.
Right. Well,
so the most you're seeing is, it's like, you know, I think the prequel part was handled the best in Last Crusade. Last Crusade handled prequel very well, because the first half hour, 25 minutes of Last Crusade, or 20 minutes of it, is how young Indy was who he was. Now it opens a big plot hole.
Yeah, show me Furiosa's kidnapping and jump to the future. Perfect.
Right. Well, I mean, we don't need to relitigate Last Crusade,
sorry,
because we're getting to be over time. But the thing is, like, if I'm curious to see how this movie ages,
Me
especially
too.
if I don't know that George Miller is getting. Okay, here's what I hope for George Miller. I hope that he does not get the green light for Warner Brothers for a third film in this trilogy because I don't think it
He
deserves
won't.
it.
He won't.
I
Yeah,
hope
the
that
box
he
office is
takes
slipping there,
his.
too.
I hope he takes his earnings if he's been smart with his money and can scrape together a few $1 million, and I mean a few $1 million, to go back out in the desert and spend the next 10 years till he's 90 making another movie. The thing is, he spent decades working on Fury Road in some capacity or another to bring it to life, and it shows.
Right.
This movie looks rushed. It looks like it's, hey, we've got a franchise here because studios love trilogies. Let's put something together. I think he needs to go back and rediscover the hunger, rediscover the roots and the simplicity, and close it out. And damn it, bring back Mel Gibson. Because I know because for as many the people who are complaining about Mel Gibson are not Mad Max fans. They're the people who are like, oh, we can't have Mel Gibson's still in movie jail. We can't let him out because of things that he said, while he was drunk during a cop arrest, almost 20 years ago. I've known people who have worked with Mel Gibson in the interim years who've, talked very highly of him. And I've asked them point blank about the controversy. And like, yeah, it's bullshit. So my point is, if you're going to try and do something with this franchise, I think close it out right. If you're going to watch this in order and say, here's Furiosa and then Fury Road, I would gamble that many people who are brand new to this are going to get out of Furiosa and be like, I'm good. I'm not going to go watch the other movies. Oh, wait, there are 3 more from 40 years ago. No, thanks. And they're going to miss out on a great set of movies because this thing that Miller has built is so far removed from what he did 40 years ago that it's not even the same DNA.
I think young people will find the Mad Max, the 70s and 80s stuff cheesy and boring and simple.
I think
compared to the hugeness of Fury Road, I think the visceralness is the best.
Look, I think aesthetically, if they look at like the poster art or whatever, like, oh, it's cheesy, it's the 70s. I think if they watch those movies, they're going to be floored.
I hope.
Because of the practical stunts, because of everything that we've talked about, the things that they can achieve, and especially if I know it's kind of cheating, but if you can whisper in their ear and be like, "This was before they could use computers to make things."
I know.
They're in danger making this bit of entertainment for you. The other thing is like, I'm sorry. I think my last point, and we do have to get to comments because we got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
My last point is, I understand Fury Road as being not necessary, but as a, hey, we did this trilogy 30 years ago. The advancements in technology, in stunt work, both in terms of like personal and also what you can do with vehicles, has advanced so far in the last 3 decades that we could really wow people with a continuation of this story. And they did that through humor, through action, through intrigue, through, hey, this is a new twist on this story that we thought we knew with Mad Max and Furiosa. I think that's where it should have ended because this movie has nothing to say. It is just retreading the same ground as before because, as we've established, because it's a prequel, we're not learning any like really new information. And the only thing we're learning visually is when you don't spend 20 years out in the desert blowing up actual cars, you have to rely on CG. And the other contrast that you really see when you watch those Fury Road segments at the end of Furiosa is how gritty that movie looked. I mean, aside from like the desert sandstorm sequence towards the beginning of Fury Road, which is very colorful and very cool, and one of the reasons the black, white, and chrome version does not work because it just gets kind of combined into this gray mess. It's Furiosa, in addition to being heavily CGI'd in a lot of parts, it's just too colorful, too poppy. And you see those scenes from the next movie at the end of this movie, and like, oh, you can see the contrast just sitting there in the cinema. And I believe that Anya Taylor-Joy grows up to be Charlize Theron in any estimation. And I think one of the reasons that she, if I speculating cosmically anyway, one of the reasons she has 30 lines is because when she does talk, she talks a lot towards the end of the picture. She's just doing a really bad version of what people think Charlize Theron would do in that part, rather than playing a character named Furiosa. She is the generic flat-voiced girl boss, And not saying that that's her character. I'm just saying that that is the same intonation that I got from her. I'm like, oh yeah, you're just doing, it's the same. My gosh, what was that movie that we talked about? The vampire movie. Abigail. Yeah, the lead in that movie. It's the same, and Anya Taylor-Joy is doing the same as the lead in that movie. She's like, I'm tough. I'm gonna get my revenge on you. You destroyed my life. I'm like, okay, where's the character in here? I got the bumper sticker. So,
Jeff,
all right.
haven't you said this about Anya Taylor-Joy off screen when we were talking about this or in the past on the show? She's a bit of a poser, or people have just don't know. Directors know how to pose her, but we never get her to really.
Yeah, she almost plays like a silent film star in some respects, because I don't think you remember her voice in anything. I think you remember her stare and her kind of intensity. And it worked kind of in a way, obviously, as we talked about before in the Queen's Gambit, very well, where it is a game of sort of psyching somebody out and watching and learning. And here, they could have made more of her sort of glowering, but you don't get enough of her glowering either. But I think she has yet to really grab a hold of a part. She did close in the menu, especially when she was defying Ray Fiennes at the end. And, she was kind of sassy throughout, maybe there. But I think she's got talent, but I don't think they've capitalized on it as well yet. And I dare say,
the silent object of affection in the Edgar Wright one, where there's not enough of her, there's more of Thomas and McKenzie.
I think they also have to be careful with her. And again, this is the agent thing. I think the agent has to be careful how they're presenting her to the public with this white blonde hair and these extravagant costumes and everything. It doesn't look serious. And I think she needs to be more serious. And like, I'm an actress, not a fashion model. And she's very close to becoming mostly an ornament, I think.
I wish they would treat her or give her some chances, because she is exotically beautiful and when in the right places, my goodness.
And striking and compelling.
But like Angelina Jolie, because there's an actress underneath that guise where she could do both. She could freeze you in place with the looks and the megawatt charisma, but then act her ass off. So we haven't seen that from Anya, and then making us question, can she really do it? Yeah,
especially when they don't have her show up for an hour and 15 minutes in this film. They also did one other thing, which is sneaky, and I'm not sure I agree with this either. I'm sorry, and I know you got to get to the comments, but I saw her give an interview where she said this young actress that they cast, as she got older, they elongated her body some, and they started to meld through CGI Anya Taylor-Joy's facial features onto hers to make her look more like her. So there was a smoother transition. And that's one of the things that they spent time and money on, special effects, because I thought, wow, they're doing some makeup on her. She's getting older because she's looking more like Anya Taylor-Joy, but that's how they cheated on this. And it's like, see, to me, if you're George Miller saying that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do, even though, movies for years have cast actors who don't look anything like another. Does Robert De Niro look anything like Marlon Brando? No, but you buy that he's Vito. But they spend time on that. Exactly. They spend time on that, but then they don't explain adequately how she got away when she ripped her arm off, or what happened in the 10 years, between her and then, taking the brides away. I mean, just things like that, or bad green screen. Like, were those reshoots? You just wonder, how did that happen with all this time prep?
I don't know. It's weird because I did notice, at least it was a trick or something, or maybe I'm filling it in because you explained it to me, but I did notice that the character started to look different as the movie went on. But I thought she started to look more like Jenna Ortega. It was very strange. Okay, so let's pull over. We got a lot of comments here, so we're going to scroll through them. Renee Cruz, any new Star Wars trilogy movies this December 12th, 24? I don't know.
Some comments. I think Renee was just spamming some comments.
I was going to say,
I'll take the deep prequel coming with the Acolyte, though. Yeah, because that's very hundreds of years further away. Where we could nothing if they Skywalker that goddamn thing. Oh my gosh! But just let that be what it's going to be down there, and it will work. So.
I don't want to imply that Renee Cruz is a bot, but we're going to go through all these. David Wilt, I think that will make the Mad Max movie so iconic because they take place in an apocalyptic future. Yes, that is definitely part of the appeal. New Star Trek movie. I want DC versus Marvel crossover. This is one.
Comics, huh?
If you guys watch The Road Warrior, one of the villains seems to be an inspiration for Jason Voorhees due to the fact that he wears a hockey mask. I thought that was Jason for the longest time when I was a
Sure.
little kid. I was a little too young
Isn't
to
he
watch
the one
these.
whose boyfriend tries to catch the boomerang and
It's
loses half his
humongous,
fingers?
humongous, right? Or
Yeah, humongous. Yeah.
Humongous. That's it. That's right. Humongous.
JLA and Legion of Superheroes team up versus Avengers and X-Men team up.
Marvel wins that one.
Spidey versus Superman.
DC wins that one.
Batman
Marvel
versus
wins
Hulk.
that one.
Is Renee the guy
Crud.
who's always posting on Twitter like, shows a
Darth
picture of
Maul,
Sean Connery? Quick, name a Sean
know.
Connery movie that isn't The Rush House. Like, really? That's the question?
No.
I have a feeling Renee Cruz is big into no money down real estate. Kylo Ren versus Darth Maul movie. Watching the Mad Max in order you understand how the character became the person that we was, because he didn't start out being a warrior. He was a police officer until his family got killed. Yep.
The first movie is so essential, and that's Mel making that happen. So yeah.
Another parallel to The Walking Dead, where we see like Rick Grimes, at the beginning of like when the world starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
All praise to 28 Days Later as well. The song "We Don't Need Another Hero" by the late Tina Turner from the third movie is such a great song because it shows you don't need guidance from anyone. That's true. Okay, I will say George Miller should get some guidance on his next cinematic endeavor. Understand the Mad Max movies like understand the Rambo movies, because in the original movie, John Rambo is basically an ordinary man who just wants to be treated like an individual, but instead he's treated like an outsider by a bigot sheriff, and he has prejudicial deputies. That's another great example of a franchise that ended up in a very different place than when it began.
That first movie is terrific. It's a
the first movie is
film.
great. And Rambo is, I think, a perfect capper. When they went to John Rambo, I'm like,
one in Burma?
No.
Yeah, the one in Burma where he hops onto the 50 cal on the Jeep, shoots the driver, and then spends at least 5 minutes just annihilating guys. I love that because there was enough seriousness.
And he walks home at the end.
There was enough seriousness in that movie that it was a combination of all the gonzo shit that they did in 2 and 3, yet it still had some of the heat, the heaviness of the first one. Rambo, when they came out, was a nice amalgamation. You can jump from First Blood. You could jump from first one to Rambo. You don't have to see 2 and 3. No. And I think that's a perfect pair right there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what,
Rocky Balboa, like if all you watch is Rocky 1 and Rocky Balboa, you could go somewhere with that too. But then the Mexican one, what was it? John Rambo,
that one was awful.
Wasn't Juan Rambo?
And then it turns into Home Alone. It turns into Rambo Home Alone at the end.
Alone, yeah. Oh god,
Stallone alone.
Stallone alone.
Stallone.
All right,
but we need to need it.
Petty, jumping in, our Argentinian super fan. Thank you so much, sir, for the 2000.
Oh, he's referring to you guys.
No.
Hey, hello, you guys. You are professional critics. Agree with Chase Mitchell's opinion that the terrible box office performance of Furiosa is the fault of the public sucks. I assume that is shit. But you're too gentlemanly to type it out. I appreciate it.
Cost, length, and the.
I think people are getting very tired of prequels, sequels, reboots. Again, part of the reason I think Barbie and Oppenheimer did well is they were fresh things at the time, and this stuff is, again, it's readily accessible on streaming platforms, and it's now a prequel. So you're right, it's predetermined. I think Hollywood has to get out of the prequel and endless sequel story. This whole thing of like, well, we're doing it because it's so much money to have to introduce something new to the public. And then along comes John Wick, and it does just fine. Thank you very much. Exactly. And then they killed that thing to death by doing 16 films. It's just inane. Do something different and better and fresh. They do it on television. They do it other places. Movies are in this weird rut.
I think the other thing is cost. Like this big budget being $168, it's going to be you asking the general public, which if Fury Road was what 300 million worldwide, that's not exactly a barnstorming blockbuster. No. So like to try to double down on that 9 years later with less star power, longer movie in an R-rated culture with heavier ticket prices, like who's coming out to that?
Ian, this is
not enough is what I'm saying. Plenty.
I think this is a call to arms to have that future of movies discussion.
Considering
we'll give them the ideas they need to fix this in Hollywood.
Hit doubles instead of home runs. RBI doubles off the wall. Make $45 million. That makes 80. That's all you need to do.
I'd also like to posit that I hope this wakes up the internet to the flaws in reflecting Rotten Tomato ratings versus
That's coming next.
box office.
Yeah,
That
I
has
agree.
frustrated me for ages. When we had our superhero films, people were equating, oh, look at it's not fresh, so it's going to bomb at the box. No, here you have a film that is rated fresh not only with critics but with audiences as well in Rotten Tomatoes, and it underperformed in a weak box office overall, not just Furiosa, but all the movies over the last Memorial Day. It is not just this movie, though. People are hanging it because it's a low-hanging fruit.
Or it's the biggest hitter of the bunch. That it's low hanging.
A window into what is the bigger problem, and the problem is Hollywood's not going to notice that. They're going to see that, oh well, it's Furiosa, and mention all the elements that you guys say. Well, this is why it bombed. It's not because majority of the audiences didn't care for this film, even though some on our panel here didn't. It's not because of that. It's not because critics didn't care for this film. They've got to evaluate exactly their entire model of what they're doing, because this is just a nice sample of exactly how your ratings and such will not reflect box office anymore. And you've got to take a turn, and expectations, where they get these guys to crunch these things going, oh, we're gonna do this open week. I'm like, do you see how many movies came out? I was sorry, I don't mean to rant, I apologize.
You're good, man.
I was doing my poll for my Patreon because I always pick wide release films for my patrons for them to pick what is going to be their exclusive spoiler room episode for just them. Okay. And going through the list of future films just for June, there are, and I am not kidding, 5 times as many brand new films coming out on streaming and VOD as there are in the box office.
In the theater, you mean?
That's a big stealer of this.
Because that's why people aren't going to they have far many other options. Or
you wait 17 days and it'll be there anyway.
Yeah, that was shocking. Fall Guy's already in VOD.
Right. And not only that, but you're already have paid for your subscription for Disney Plus, and Disney Plus is going to release 6 new films exclusively on that. Peacock's got 4 or 5. Amazon has got 5 of them. And these aren't small. These aren't small films.
No,
these are bigger with actual known names in them.
Well, here, Mark, I know you are rural Wisconsin compared to us in the big city.
I am.
How much is your IMAX ticket in Wausau?
Oh, we don't have an IMAX in Wausau.
No, but where'd you go see your?
When I went to see it, I went to Marcus Theater, and the ahead of time price was it was $13. In town here, it's $10 for an evening show in Point, but in Wausau, it's because it's a Marcus, it's a bigger chain. Marcus charges $13 to, I've seen up to $17 depending on the film, because they're doing this tiered pricing as well of what is the big film. Some
compare that
to this.
That's a month's worth of content on the streaming service of your choice. Wow, that's where people are going. You can get so much more bang for your buck in a tough economy with young people who aren't making money and poor millennials, where I can't blame a soul for sticking to streaming, especially when these movies dump so fast to streaming. When Barbie and Oppenheimer and Top Gun Maverick, because we've talked about these redundancies, like when those things come around, Spider-Man No Way Home, it's because they don't put a date on their streaming as soon as it comes out. They make the FOMO of, the only way I'm going to see this for like 6 months is going to be in a theater, whether you're Avatar, Top Gun, whatever. Like, you got to stake your claim and put no streaming future on it. Don't announce a disc release, because I don't know if you follow like the Groove email Universal stuff. Like, they already have the disc art for Mad Max Fury Road.
I saw that.
They already have those now. Like, that's welcome to screwing your own self in the secondary market.
Well, let's let Ian end the show, and let's save some of this for that conversation. I think we need to have that.
My apologies.
We're planting seeds here, but I think because the box office. I mean, it's weird to say that the summer is already dead, but I mean, we've got like Inside Out 2.
That's people are gonna wait for Disney. People are gonna wait for Disney.
But I'm saying, like, just in terms of like what's coming out, Deadpool Wolverine is the end of July, and you've got Despicable Me 2 in June or 4.
Watch that be a rotten movie that rakes though. Watch that be 20%.
It's totally gonna make $1 billion. The Minions and all that.
That's because there's nothing else for kids in the theater.
Right. But my point is, we're going to get a little bit nuts, in the words of great Michael Keaton, this summer, because with nothing coming out, I still want to do these Wednesday shows, but we're going to talk about, I think next week, we're going to come back and talk about the state of movies and box office and all the things we're kind of planting this seeds up here. It'll be a nice long discussion. Right? Exactly. And then we're gonna flash back to some other weirder movies, I think, over the summer, because you know what? The Toxic Avenger turned 40 this year, and I want to talk about that movie. I don't care if anyone else wants to. Mark, I know you'll be there for that one.
Hey, how about Soylent Green? Can we talk about Soylent Green? No.
We could talk about whatever you want, man. It's
all
back
to 1999 and toast up a big year that's having 25th this year. You know, there's back to there and find
Fight Club. It's crazy. But anyway, we do have a couple of other comments here. Why is there such a big dissociation between critics' ratings and what people are willing to pay to see in the cinema? We kind of talked about that just now, Petty, but we're going to get more into that later, because I do want to talk about Rotten Tomatoes and, you know, all of that stuff.
There's a herd mentality thing going around too, a little bit too. Yeah,
sure. But there's so many different facets of it. There's not one answer. There's multi, layers to it.
Yeah.
Many problems.
But let's see. This last question excludes you as critics because your comments you're making are more aligned with what is happening at the box office. But Petty, it's an interesting point, because we don't always agree with each other, much less what Rotten Tomatoes is saying, and Rotten Tomatoes sometimes aligns with the public versus. I know, surprise, Mark. You're as surprised as I am. The reaction to this.
Two of us are on there, though. You know, that's the crazy thing is we buck the trend.
Well, I still have to write something. I haven't done anything all year.
The T-shirt says. The T-shirt also says, "This is a business first and an art exposition second because you sell tickets to it." That's the number one answer why that is always a factor in the way we have to write, or the way the business plays it. It just is.
That's true. I mean, art and commerce. I mean, you need to be able to. You have to be able to afford to buy brushes and paint.
Exactly.
All right. So Petty also says criticism of Mario's movie killed it, but people chose it and paid the ticket to see it. Yes,
just family movie, PG, 90 minutes. You can run that thing 7 times a day, and kids love it. No one IP,
and it was awesome. No, I know there's some disagreement there about the Mario movie. Okay, we're gonna end it with a comment about being well dressed. Jeff, your fashion sense is always impeccable, but this time the last button on the polo shirt is going to be the main topic of the session with my psychoanalyst. What?
The top button, is it bad?
Let it go.
Don't like it?
I think it's because you have it buttoned, but there's no tie, so it's just buttoned all the way.
You're a pro with this, though.
Sometimes I button it, sometimes I don't. Thank you for thinking I'm impeccable. Wow. This one was a little bit bigger around the neck, and I decided to sort of do the David, not David. What was this? The Perry polo shirts where they wear them buttoned to the top. They're in England. You need
hamburger meat foot, man.
Tennis player. I forget his first name.
The 6 gold chains that are underneath there. We know they're there. Come on. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you for that. Wow.
Where's your shark tooth necklace? It's there. Nice. We know it's there. Come on.
Jay York in the house.
Wow. This
the whitest man in America, right here, folks. But,
why he wears black.
Somehow I've got some street cred. Thank you very much. I love it.
Well, all right, guys. This has been, believe it or not, this has been a discussion about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. And I do appreciate all, especially you guys hanging out for an hour and a half talking with us. If we go for another hour, we'll give the movie a run for its runtime. But I got to get to sleep, and I got to let my fine friends here go. And also you in the comments, thank you very much for hanging out, for participating. For those, if you're watching this on the replay, again, let us know in the comments what you thought of Furiosa, what you thought of Fury Road, the Mad Max saga in general, the future of movies. If you leave some comments, some ideas down there, maybe we'll talk about them next week, because we're going to be back at 8:00 Central Time next Wednesday talking about the movie biz as sort of a follow-up, as Don mentioned, to our pandemic episode, which is probably aged like milk.
Wow. I got to go back
Ian,
and watch
thank
that
you
one,
for
it was you, it was me. We did 2, I think, where I got to see those. I will go back and watch.
By the way, Ian, thank you for letting us be a part of the next 1,000.
That's right.
Oh, thank you.
The first of the next 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, this is 1,003.
Three, yeah.
3.
Oh, so you're including all those others. Oh, shoot. I thought we were kind of 1,001, but yeah, it's all the other ones that you do so many.
You're number one
Prolific.
in my heart, Jeff. So, all right, gang. So
it's
yes,
the polo shirt.
It really it's only if you undo that button. Hey, we're gonna take this offline, everybody. But no, thanks everybody. We have been Earth's Mightiest Critics. Please be sure and not only like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I see some people watching right now. Give this a thumbs up, would you?
Yes.
While you're at it, while you're still
We
here
will.
with us.
We're here.
Hell, even a thumbs down. I'll take the engagement. But don't do that. But no. So yeah, and also be sure and support all of Earth's Mightiest Critics. Their information is down below. And yeah, thanks everybody. Take care. And Furiosa is now in theaters, and that statement will be true for
38 days.
38.
Not even.
40.
More like
45.
3.8 days.
It'll get to 45. That's a week.
Okay, well,
plus this, so 38 more days.
All right. Oh, and Petty says bye. He's off
Thank
to
you,
see
Petty.
his psychoanalyst. All right, cool. Everybody, thanks so much and take care.